Noreen Sumpter from Beyond Potential, Live Life. We have some technical difficulty. Well, good evening. This is Noreen from Beyond Potential, Live Life Your Way. And tonight we are signing in from a brand new location. As you can see, we have a tremendous amount of space behind us, which I'm sure at some point will be made into a peanut gallery. And I'm happy to be here as always. Tuesday night is my favorite time of the week because why? I get to be with you and I get to talk about subjects that are of interest to me and work with and interview people or talk to people, because really it's like a fireside conversation without the fire. Talk to people that I'm interested in, that I find fascinating, to come on my show and share their 2 cents about their lives, also about what's important to them, and just, really share with us the knowledge that they've garnered over the years and such. So before we get started, I just want to share with you a little bit about my week. So not my week, but so yesterday I went to a really great event. I went to an event was called The Power of Influence, and they were honoring Black entertainers and business people in New York City. And I got the pleasure of seeing Little Kim.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, Little Kim, right? And, everybody talks about how much surgery she's had and everything. Yes, it's quite shocking. Yes, it is sort of looks like Michael Jackson. But to be quite honest, it's not that bad. In my opinion, it wasn't.
She's an attractive woman.
It wasn't that bad.
And she's got a nice personality,
Absolutely.
too. Yeah.
And, it was fine. I was expecting, TV makes it actually look worse than what it really is. And I was quite surprised to say that it wasn't bad at all. But I did meet one lovely fella. Well, I met lots of lovely fellas, but met one lovely guy, which is Beyonce's stylist.
Love it.
Ty Hunter. What an awesome man. So sweet. So, just awesome. We spent time together talking about, I'm not a fashionista. I'm not into fashion, but we just spent time talking about fashion and, but not general fashion. We were talking about creating your own style.
Yeah. Because
he's a stylist, right? And so he was talking about the era that he likes. He likes 1970s, and he told me about the pants that he was wearing and the little shirt, which was from 1970s. And I had on a dress, this nice dress that was made by a Nigerian stylist, and Converse sneakers with pink laces.
Awesome.
Because I didn't want to wear heels.
Yeah.
Because I saw all the women that were wearing heels, they were suffering, literally took their shoes off and was walking in the courtyard. But it was a really dapper. Dan was there, and I'm just so honored to meet him very quickly. It was like one of those what do I call it? What is it when you meet somebody but you don't really know them, but you it's like you take a photograph with them. I didn't want to do statue photographs. I call it when you stand together and you go that. No, I didn't want to do that. But what a nice guy, and really awesome opportunity for him to be recognized for all that work that he's done over the years, that now he's actually being recognized for it. That was really nice. There was a ton of people. It was great. So anyway, let's get on with the show. So tonight's show is about suicide. That issue that many of us don't know about, and there are people that are out there contemplating it. And tonight I have with me a renowned New York psychiatrist, Dr. Nicole Naggar.
Thanks
so
for having
welcome
me.
to the show.
Yeah.
And so we're going to mash it up and talk about suicide. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Oh, I'm so glad you are here. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, for sure.
So question, tell us a little bit about yourself. I know you're married and you have 2 wonderful children.
Yeah.
And what else don't we know about you?
Yeah, I have 2 boys, 4.5 and 5.5.
Uh-huh.
And I have a husband.
Uh-huh. Lucky for you.
And, these days I am pretty much distilled down to being a mom, a wife, and a psychiatrist.
Uh-huh. And you are running.
I am always running.
Ripping and running through the city.
Yeah, but I love what I do. And it's really quite an honor, especially in these days where we are really front and center focusing on mental health issues. It really is such a privilege to have the job that I have, and really to be able to change people's lives and help them through some of their most painful of times. Right.
What I love about Dr. Naggar is that, or Nicole, as I like to say, is that she's got a spirit. Psychiatry is very much a logical type of practice. It's very logical, very specific. But what I love about Dr. Nicole is that I'm calling you doctor now, right? Normally it's Nicole, but I don't know. I'm just calling you doctor and give you reverence.
Makes me sound more official, right? I suppose.
And, but what I love about her is she's got the spiritual component. You've got the spiritual component, and together the two, it's just like, it's just refreshing, because you're not like staid. Yeah. You're very sort of expressive, open, and I love that. I just love that about it.
Thank you. I mean, what I really do appreciate about what I've been able to do in my own private practice is simply take everything that I've learned, but filter it through who I am, and just be who I am. And actually, overwhelmingly, that's what patients, report as what they respond to, especially when it comes to dealing with such sensitive issues that sometimes you're the first person that they're ever speaking, out loud, some of these issues that they're afflicted with.
Sometimes this is the first time they're actually hearing it for themselves.
Absolutely. And so I think to be a person in the room, and that with, a rich context of sensitivity and just a life. Yeah. Empathy. Yeah. All these things. I mean, it's more, you can't just be a doctor, right? And that's what patients need when they're exploring these really sensitive issues in their lives.
Right. So Nicole, when did you know that you wanted to be a psychiatrist?
So it's a great question. I actually thought for the longest time that I would go into medicine and focus on pediatrics. And essentially at medical school, I hated that rotation. Someone once likened it to veterinary medicine, and I kind of agree.
Pediatric described it to veterinary medicine.
Yeah, it really is. If you think about it, you're just kind of interpreting signs and symptoms and talking to the parents like the owner. And, it was just, I also realized that any bits of medicine, really out there outside of psychiatry was very much focused on as quickly as possible moving through what was the person. And of course, that's important in certain fields, but what I loved the most was connecting with the person and their narrative and their story. And I think those relationships were the thing that I found most interesting. And then certainly when I thought about in an everyday way how I'd be spending my time as a physician, as a psychiatrist, I am the tool. And my time spent with the patient rather as a doctor, that really is the intervention, and I'm not just shuffling them off. So I just thought it was the best fit, and I love it.
Yeah, it's one of the things that you just said, which is what I say about myself as a personal life coach, is that I am the tool, And what I like about what you just said was that when you go to the doctors nowadays, it's like 15 minutes if you're lucky, right?
Yeah.
So it's in and out, and it's 15 minutes, and a lot of it is guessing, right? So it's like, I like the fact that you connect with the patient. I always want to connect with my doctor, and I tend to like monopolize when I go to the doctor, because I'm going to the doctor to be taken care of. And I just don't want you to just give me stuff that you think, it connects to some paragraph or sentence in a medical book, as opposed to listening to what I am saying. So that's really great that you do that. So you knew you wanted to be at school. So you knew when you were younger, you wanted to be in medicine.
I did. I don't know exactly where that came from. But
do you come from a family of doctors?
I don't. I absolutely don't. I have 2 other sisters. I'm the oldest of 3. When I was quite young, when I was 5, my father passed away of a heart attack, and my mom raised us as a single mom. I think part of her push was obviously to, emphasize that we needed to be able to be educated women who could, make something of ourselves professionally and be able to take care of ourselves, because she was in that kind of position when, left as a widow. But the doctor thing, I don't know. I think it just was a sensibility that I recognized early on. I liked people. I liked science. I thought it was really interesting, all the biology and that kind of thing. And I just kept on, chasing that vision. Yeah.
That's great. Because you also have a sister who is a plastic surgeon.
Yeah. So it did turn out that my middle sister, who always thought she wanted to go into law, had
law, plastic surgery.
Yeah. Freshman year of college, just didn't like, I guess, those introductory philosophy, poli-sci classes. And I said, I was always very focused on this. And I said, Noelle, why don't you give it a try? And oh man, is she like the most amazing physician and did so well throughout her career. And she's just like kicking some butt out there in the world.
And I know she's really good at what she does, because she had an open house at her office, which she has open houses on Saturdays, right? Most Saturdays. And so, plastic surgery was not one of the things that I thought about, but I took it upon myself because you'd sent out that invitation to go, because I thought, let me just go look, because how often do you really get an opportunity to go to a plastic surgeon's office without wanting to do something?
Yeah.
So I went, and it was really good. I really enjoyed the experience of going. Can I see that? Her bedside manner is really good. And it's just like, it's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to make a difference. It's an opportunity to change if you want to correct some things if you want to. And so what I want to do with her is actually schedule like a girls event to sort of go and just like I'd like to introduce women of color to it as well. I mean, I know we're doing it more now, more so than before, but I would like to create something in that vein.
We're both mothers of young children, but we keep on talking about doing a joint paper because this ties back. There's a mental health piece here, which is in this day and age, there is so much shaming around seeking out plastic surgery. In fact, a lot of people talk about it on the hush hush. Oh, they don't even want their friends, family, husbands to know. And the truth is, just like you said, sometimes, especially when the reward risk ratio is there, sometimes there could be just a little something that you could do that actually could just be very meaningful and help you get that sort of
little boost.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think, we all have to kind of have a much more non-judgmental, accepting stance that we take with it.
Absolutely. And I think a paper one, would be good also, because there are different components, I imagine, there's a healthy component, right? Which is you're just going to go and get a little something done and maybe a refresher, right? And then there's components where you are going back and forth trying to fix yourself when in actuality, you're not broken.
Yeah. And so in those cases, it takes someone like my sister to have a sort of psychological mind in the evaluation and approach to a patient, because, those folks, some of which have true body dysmorphia, those are the folks that there's never going to be anything that really gets at what they're looking for. They're always going to be in seek of tweaking something. And it's often to heal something that is a deeper wound inside.
So we're going to hold that thought, and then we're going to come right back. Thank you.
You're listening to the Talking Alternative Network.
You're listening to the Talking Alternative Network. Are you stuck in a rut? Negative thoughts, feelings, and conversations got you down? Hi, I'm Noreen Sumpter, the Potentiator. Tune in every Tuesday at 9 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time and listen for new ideas on my show, Beyond Potential, Live Life Your Way, on talkradio.nyc. Who
do you want to connect with?
Are you an entrepreneur or intrapreneur looking to build your following?
Welcome to our show.
Follow Me Friday with Joan
and Priya.
Tune in every Friday at noon Eastern
on talkradio.nyc.
We're your digital connectors.
Woo woo!
Talking Alternative Radio, 24 hours a day.
Great. Hi, and we're back. This is Noreen Sumpter from Beyond Potential, Live Life Your Way, and I'm tonight speaking with Nicole Naggar. That's Naggar, not what I thought it was when
I once had a patient call me that, and I was like, I'm sorry, that's not my name.
So we're talking about, we're just getting to know Nicole, what she's about, what she stands for, before we get into the deep and painful subject of suicide. So we're back.
Yeah.
So Nicole, we are here to basically just talk about suicide with Anthony Bourdain. I can never say that word. I'm trying to say it the French way, but I'll forget that. And Kate Spade. What was your take on it?
Yeah. I mean, in some ways, I'm not surprised, right? Because I think their narratives, especially Kate's, is one that we struggle with in our profession. Those that actually have illness, or I should say it first. So this is all based on speculation, things that I gather that have been put out in the press. I'm not familiar firsthand,
and you're not prescribing anything.
With the details of Kate's care. But allegedly, she was suffering in silence, so to speak, with mental illness, and because of her essentially celebrity, she really struggled with taking that step to get help. So I think when you're dealing with acute mood dysregulation, and in the background have chronic impairment from that, at times there's going to be stressors in one's life that completely overwhelm a person's ability to be able to cope. And in that, hopelessness, in that despair, the option of suicide becomes one that seems appealing to those who are suffering, and really it's a escape fantasy. But as I say about suicide, it's a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And people should always know that there's help out there. And in fact, just as we are talking, I want to just mention really the National Suicide Prevention Hotline, 1-800-273-TALK, 8255, is always just just right at your fingertips.
It's a phone call away. It's a click away. There's that little chat box that you can click on the chat box and have immediate conversation. But I imagine, like, when you're experiencing those kinds of, I'm just saying, moods, disorder, pain, whatever you're experiencing, that might be the last thing on your mind, because also I'm going to just look at like Kate's celebritism, right? There's individuals that have just normal lives, and they're concerned about being outed, being judged, the stigma attached to that. And that stigma is really, really old. I found something on the web that mentioned that when people committed suicide in the Middle Ages, the corpses were regularly mutilated to prevent the unleashing of evil spirits. Suicides were denied burial in churches, cemeteries afterwards, property of the surviving kin was usually confiscated and families excommunicated for failing to pay the heavy tithes expected of the church. Now, I didn't know that. That is so I can sort of really say that I'm not surprised that the stigma is attached to it, because if you're levied a fine, which is in the nature of a tithe, and your body is mutilated, the shame that brings on your family as within the religious context, I can see why people don't want to, are stigmatized and don't want to talk about it today.
I think in this day and age, look, certainly we've come a far way from that, right? But in this day and age, I think we could also all agree that we haven't come far enough.
Absolutely.
Because 1 in every 4 people in America will fall prey to depression. It's such an issue for us, even from a disability standpoint, right? The millions, billions of dollars that go to care and to serving folks who are still in a chronic depressive state. Here's what we need to do. We need to have an understanding that there is a biological basis to behavior, and that a lot of these folks, when it's this severe, they really do need the help of medication, as well as the support that comes in the form of psychotherapy and of course, friends and family.
Right. And so, we talk about it's a brain, right? Brain and body disorders, hormones and things like that can kick off depression, can kick off mood swings, and can kick off those to the level of where somebody will commit suicide. What kinds of, where is this in the body that this takes place?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. So if we look at some research that's come out recently, and we look at the brain, essentially the brain has the cortex, which is the higher order, more evolved part of the brain that helps us, make decisions and think and premeditation and what have you. And then we have the more primitive brain, the interior structures of the brain, and that's where a lot of our sort of primal drives come from.
Is that
right?
what they call the reptilian?
Yes,
brain?
You got it. And so what's interesting is when we're doing, when we've done some imagery of the brain, when a toddler's having a temper tantrum, or an adult, is having a shit fit kind of thing. What we see is the blood flow, the brain really is organized mostly around that primitive part.
Right.
And so that really is suggestive of this idea that in those moments of acute dysregulation, we're not able to access that higher order level of thinking, that rational mind.
Right.
We're totally emotional in nature. And you combine that with somebody who is impulsive, you combine that with somebody who's had a history of attempts in the past, or has had some sort of exposure to it, whether it be through family or friends, or frankly, because it's what's going on in the times. And you combine that with someone who has access, right? Whether to a firearm or any other sort of means. And then you combine that with, the isolation that might be happening in
the inability to communicate.
Absolutely.
Right.
And or just the idea that in these cases, a lot of folks, they just stop talking. They just kind of go into their little hole.
Right.
They stop reaching out to friends and family.
Right.
And oftentimes we don't know what's going on with them. If you put all of those things together, you can see how those risks start to pool in a way that it becomes much more likely that in those states, they're going to be vulnerable to those urges, those impulses.
Communication. I always used to say that the moment I'm stopped talking, there's a problem, right? As long as I'm talking, there is no problem. And I found that if you're dealing with an issue, it's best to talk about it. You got to find somebody that you can communicate with. The moment you shut down, that's it. It could be that is it, right? So it's really important to reach out and talk. to people, because without communication, it's like we go into this world of silence. And so if you're in pain, I'm asserting that if you're in pain and you're in silence and you're communicating, what is like a tension starts to build.
Absolutely. And without releasing that tension, there are the seeds of mental illness, whether it come out through aggression,
right.
whether it come out through depression,
right.
whether it come out through anxiety. Those are absolutely the seeds. And really part of the therapeutic process, especially if we are just dealing with mild to moderate illness, transdiagnostically, so we're talking depression, anxiety alike, just talk therapy can be enough. It actually can be enough. It is also true, though, that studies show, again, across all diagnoses, that if we're dealing with moderate to severe pathology, that really it's going to be the combination of medication management and psychotherapy together that are going to affect the change that's necessary for a patient.
Right. So let me ask you a question about people using medicines to temper these situations, right? Is it a situation where, because a lot of people don't want to take medication, and they don't want to take medication for a really long time. And some people are, like I had a friend who was bipolar, and he was able to manage his bipolar without medication. He was on medication. He didn't like the way the medication made him feel. So he literally trained his brain to manage his bipolar and was able to regulate himself and know what his triggers were. Is that a possibility?
I think it is a possibility. And I think, like anything, there's degrees of pathology. And that person, although I don't know them personally, likely had more along the lines of, mild to moderate degrees of pathology. Really what we see is in more severe degrees of pathology, especially when we're dealing with bipolar disorder, it's going to get a little trickier to be able to handle it all just through regulation of environment and self. But simply just through breathing.
Right.
Let's talk about breathing.
Breathing exercise. Something
that's accessible to everybody, especially coming back to this topic at heart, right? You're acutely dysregulated. Your mind starts to spiral. You start to feel very hopeless, helpless, and you start fantasizing about escape.
Right.
Just to even take the edge off of that, one just needs to practice and work with the breath.
Okay. This
simple intervention of breathing is really going to kick off a cascade of events internally that is going to start to slow down the aroused state in the body. And really, once you're beginning that process, then you have a chance to access that higher order of thinking, that rational. Yeah, but also just this idea that when we're acutely dysregulated, we're so emotional that we can't think logically, right? But if we could try to take the edge off of that a little bit, even if it's just through our breath, then maybe we can start to think through things a little bit and access that rational brain.
What about like taking a breath, going for a walk?
Absolutely. Yeah. Look, there's so many different strategies out there, and really they're all personal, but changing a change of scenery, working with your breath, calling a friend, sometimes even just, putting on some music that takes you to a place that is much more peaceful and serene in nature for oneself. Smells can be quite, healing in a way and calming. Really any kind of practice whereby somebody can start to relate to their thoughts and feelings in a different way, such that they feel more in control of them. They might not go away, but a person feels more in control of them.
They can manage themselves.
That's right.
Yeah, because technically we are not our thoughts and our feelings. We have thoughts and feelings. And if we realize that we have thoughts and feelings, when we're thinking, it's me, this is happening to me, we can realize, no, it's my thoughts that are having me say that this is happening to me, and it's not really true. Because where can you find that thing in nature? You just can't find it.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. And we call that the observing self.
We're going to have to take a break, hold that thought, and we'll be right back. So we'll be right back.
You're listening to the Talking Alternative Network.
Are you into comics, movies, and pop culture at large? What about music and TV? Then you're in for a treat. This is Michael Dolce, your host on TalkingAlternative.com. I've been professionally writing comic books, screenplays, and music articles for almost 15 years. Catch my show, Secrets of the Sire, at its new primetime slot, Wednesdays, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and get the inside scoop on the pop culture universe you love to talk about. For more info, go to secretsofthesire.com.
Are you feeling unhappy with your body, shape, or size? Ever feel out of control with food? I'm Elizabeth Tripp, your host of Nourish the Soul. Join me to uncover the root to these imbalances and discover a permanent solution to living a healthy life. Join us every Wednesday at my new time, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on talkradio.nyc.
Talking Alternative Radio, 24 hours a day.
Go out. So this is Noreen Sumpter, and we're back on Beyond Potential, Live Life Your Way. And I'm speaking with Dr. Nicole Naggar, who is a psychiatrist, and we're looking at suicide and mental health. So I told you to hold that thought. Did you hold it?
I did.
Great.
We were talking about the observing self.
Right.
And really just to define that a little bit, it's that state that you were talking about where we recognize or we adopt a stance of noticing ourselves, that we are not fused with our thoughts and feelings,
right,
but that we take a more objective, a step back from our experiences. A nice analogy is being the audience member of our own sort of theatrical experience,
right,
that we could zoom in at any one time and really become engrossed in a certain thought or feeling or something that's going on, but that in the observing stance that we can zoom out and that we're not overtaken and we don't merge with that experience. And really, that's the place that we want to try to get to whenever we're feeling overwhelmed with thoughts and feelings that are causing that kind of pain and suffering.
Right. So with what you just said, if I'm a person that's experiencing pain and I'm upset and I'm in this dark place, I might say, yeah, it's okay for you to say, but you don't understand my circumstances. What would you say to that person? Somebody could be watching this right now and they say, you just don't understand. What would you say to them right now?
Meaning like they can't take advantage of this.
Right. They can't, they're just hearing this and it sounds like gobbledygook to them.
What I would say is, that everyone's experience is their own.
Right.
And that I would validate up and down. If they were sitting in the, consulting room across from me, I would validate up and down that I know that they feel like there's no way out, that they've tried everything, that it really does feel like there's nothing out there for them. But I would ask them to hold on to any kind of glimmer of hope or change that they have, and to really, to really focus on that, and then to try to sort of engage in whatever they can that is going to bring meaning to their lives. Because if one comes from a place where they can start to think more flexibly about where they're at, right? Then suddenly we can start, all doors that were closed can suddenly start
crack open.
open.
Yeah, because the door's not going to open wide right away. It's little cracks, like baby steps in the process, I imagine.
And that's what we're looking for. Any window, any hope that we can kind of get in there and really change it so that, yes, you're suffering. Yes, you're in pain. But what else can we do to help you feel connected to a life that would provide meaning to you?
Absolutely.
If there's a chance that we can do that, that's the beginning of something, and we can build from there.
I usually call it, what's the one action that you can take to have you win today? Just one action. And it could be something, I had clients who, they do one thing that makes them feel good about themselves. It might be like even just going to get their nails done, like a simple act of getting a nail done, or going for a walk, or just looking at nature and finding something beautiful in nature that they can connect with. Yeah. Right. It's like, it's really looking at your life from the inside out, not from the outside in. Because I think many of us are looking at lives, we're looking at all these glamorous lives and we can't understand why our life is not that way. And so it's looking from the outside and trying to make that fit your life rather than being from the inside out. I mean, people look at, Kate Spade and Anthony Bourdain, and they say, well, they had it made. They had everything. Yeah. How do you speak to that?
I mean, I think, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, right? And so everybody has their own narrative. And I think the problem with that what they were both facing was that they had a narrative inside that felt like there's only one way out. Right. And it's just when we are acutely depressed, right? We that's the problem. We don't see another narrative, right? And that's exactly why we need to reach out when we're in that kind of pain, when we're suffering like that. I think there is a misconception about, getting mental health treatment, which is, the idea is we're not giving you something to be happy. Whether it be therapy or a pill, we're not trying to eradicate, any, sort of level of distress or angst. I mean, part of the human condition, after all, is to have this range of emotion. How do you know what happy is if you haven't been sad? Exactly. It's contrast. And how do you know what reward is if you haven't lost something? Right. And so I think, the idea is that we have to change the narrative such that we have we take a more open stance to accepting what is sometimes pain. The lack of accepting that pain really is what causes our suffering and what adds to the chronicity of our depression in these cases or anxiety. Right.
So it's basically what I'm hearing you say. It's like you have to own that you are in pain.
Absolutely.
Right? Don't try to hide it. Don't try to submerge it. Don't try to fix it. Just own it. And once you've owned it, then you can start to look at it and then maybe reach out and take the actions to get some support. Because I think a lot of us are under the illusion that I'm not supposed to experience pain. I'm supposed to be happy all the time. No. Well, happiness is you have to experience sadness as well to know happiness. It's like, I'm going to say for me, a few years ago, like a good many years ago, I remember dating this guy and I was really unhappy about it because the relationship had broken down. And when we broke up, and I was like, every morning I'd wake up and I would think about it, and I'd be like, miserable, a little bit depressed about it, but I was functional. I wasn't dysfunctional, right? Because it's just a part of life. And I remember one day when I just actually woke up and I was just like, I didn't look for it. I didn't look for being upset about it. I didn't think about the breakdown. And I was like, oh my God, in my mind, I was like, why did I wake up this way? Where is it? It was like literally like looking for the experience that I had been experiencing because it just lifted like a cloud. But what there is like, I know for who I am, always having to be strong, always having to be this, always having to be that. It's just really accepting that I can't always be strong.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I am happy in my life. Things are going to happen, right? It's kind of like I've got 5 fingers. Maybe this finger is sad, but the rest of my life is great. So if I can work on what this situation is, rather than having it cloud my whole life.
That's right.
I'm up against the odds, right? Whereas most people feel like this, they have a breakdown in their relationship and it clouds the whole thing. And then their whole life becomes this miserable, experience where they're depressed and they're walking around being depressed. And then they become to know themselves as depressed. So when they wake up that morning and they don't have it, they have to look for it. They're looking for it somewhere else. So we can we can know ourselves as a certain thing. Does that make sense?
It absolutely makes sense. And actually, there used to be sort of what we call like the depressive personality. And really what I would argue to you is, those folks are often the folks that have gone for so long untreated that becomes their identity, right? And that becomes the way they relate to self, the way they relate to others, the way they relate to the world. And once that thinking is so ingrained, it really can be sometimes difficult to undo it.
Absolutely.
And so to your point before,
difficult, not impossible.
Not impossible, just difficult. But to your point before, that's exactly why we need to identify it. We need to be self-aware. We need to identify it, and we need to talk about it. And we need to, if you will, expel it in that sense. If I do a little exercise, if I tell you, Noreen, no matter what you do right now, don't think about a pink elephant.
Of course, I'm going to think about pink elephant.
Right. Exactly. That's it, right? So think about you going through, let's say it's anxiety that you're dealing with. Think about the experience that it's like to have where you're anxious all the time, but you're denying yourself of that.
Right. It's a horrible feeling.
It becomes the very thing that then defines you.
That's all you think about is anxiety.
It defines you.
Right.
And so it's why we really do need to address these things as they're coming up. And it's why we have to keep, it's so unfortunate, these tragic events, but, the spiritual side of me thinks, what good could come of this? And I just hope that their narratives just keep, the conversation going in the press, but back in our own lives, to be much more vigilant of those around us, ourselves certainly, but also those around us.
Yeah, and there's this whole thing going through the internet right now, which says, check on the strong ones. Check on the people that are really, really strong. Check on the people that I'm okay. Because when we're going to take a break. We're going to take a break in 1 minute. When I heard of Anthony Bourdain doing suicide, I was like, wow, I wondered for a moment whether I could do that. Right? Because I consider myself a pretty reasonably strong person, pretty confident, talking about stuff. But it's like, I saw myself in him. It wasn't like, oh, he's separate from me. This is a man that, I saw myself in. Like, I could actually, not that I'm going to, but I could actually see that, because our beingness, if I don't practice and keep on having conversations, checking in with friends, talking about what I'm dealing with, or if I'm dealing with anything, I too, just like we're not separate and apart. We're all connected. We can all do this.
Absolutely.
And that's what I was able to see. So we're going to take a break and we'll be right back.
You're listening to the Talking Alternative Network.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant, and on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays, 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
Are you feeling unhappy with your body, shape, or size? Ever feel out of control with food? I'm Elizabeth Tripp, your host of Nourish the Soul. Join me to uncover the root to these imbalances and discover a permanent solution to living a healthy life. Join us every Wednesday at my new time, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on talkradio.nyc.
TalkingAlternative.com.
This is Noreen Sumpter, and we're back from Beyond Potential, Live Life Your Way. And again, I'm speaking to Dr. Nicole Naggar, psychiatrist and private practice holder in New York City. And we're talking about suicide. So I just want to hit on a point. It says that 122 Americans commit suicide each day. They die from suicide each day. And it says that 9.4 million adults in the United States have serious thoughts about suicide within the past 12 months. But suicide is preventable. So it's important to know what to do and where to go for information. So I got this off mentalhealth.gov. So what are the warning signs, right? We have here talking about wanting to die or kill oneself, looking for a way to kill oneself. That's my friend's brother who created a whole manual and put a sign on his chest after inhaling helium, killing himself, right? And talking about feeling hopeless and having no reason to live, talking about feeling trapped or it's unbearable pain, talking about being a burden to others, increasing the use of alcohol and drugs, acting anxious or agitated and behaving recklessly, sleeping too much or too little, withdrawing or feeling isolated, showing rage or talking about seeking revenge, displaying extreme mood swings. So, Nicole, you had mentioned that just talking to a doctor about the experience or the feeling of wanting to commit suicide, some people feel like they will be locked up because that's a lot of the past. In the past, a lot of that happened.
So I think it's really important for everyone to understand that, suicidal ideation is a complex beast to evaluate. And, what I was saying earlier is that what a lot of patients fear is, if I tell the doctor that I've been thinking about this, which is a really important symptom for a doctor to know, right? They feel like they're going to lock me up in a hospital. Well, here's the thing. It's not that simple. There has to be intent. There has to be a plan. There has to be strong urges. There has to be a whole host of reasons why a doctor, while evaluating you in that moment of time, really feels that you are a clear and present danger to yourself or others. Unless all of those criteria are met, then you can't be locked up against your will.
Right.
But the most important thing is we're talking about getting help, right? And so really, no matter where that leads you, right, I think the idea is let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. Let's just start to talk. Let's just start to get the help, I mean, really, I can't tell you how many times a person walks into the emergency room because someone called because they had suicidal ideation and we end up discharging them, So it's not that simple. And I want to be clear because this is something that a lot of patients don't want to talk about, even to their beloved psychiatrists or psychotherapists, because they're afraid of the consequences. Right. So intent, really, a plan, urges, a history, impulsivity. These are the kinds of things that would start to set off the alarm bells.
Right. And for a person to commit suicide, it's not an overnight decision, right? Would you say?
Sometimes it can be that impulsive.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely.
So a person can go from being okay to all of a sudden they're going to kill themselves?
Absolutely. And we'll see that more in cases where there may be these people may be impaired on some level, right? There may be a long history of impulse control issues, right? Such that you wouldn't have been able to predict that that's the way things would have gone. It's not, is that the majority of cases? I can't tell you based on statistics, but, as a clinician, in terms of cases that I've seen, it's not usually the case. The seeds are usually there before.
Right. The signs are usually there. So how can tell us something that you would like, what's the kind of patient that you have and that you would like to work with?
Yeah, I mean, I really love treating a whole host of patients, ages late adolescent to really through late adulthood. I have patients as old as in their 70s. I really deal primarily with mood disorders, variety of depression, whether it be bipolar depression or unipolar depression.
Unipolar depression?
Meaning major depressive disorder.
Okay.
We now like to distinguish major depressive disorder from a bipolar depression because they are in fact different. And if I could just digress for 1 minute, just because this has come up with the allegations that perhaps Kate Spade had untreated bipolar. The two vary in that bipolar depression is one that is characterized with a history of there having been either a hypomanic or a manic event, even just one such event in that patient's life, then by default, by definition, they become a bipolar depressive type.
Right.
And the reason that's important, the treatments are different.
Right.
The treatments are different. And so when we're evaluating that, family history can often be something that can be a tip off.
Right.
I treat lots of different anxiety disorders, generalized anxiety, panic disorder, social phobia. I've had lots of PTSD cases, eating disorders, personality disorders.
Wow.
There really isn't anything that I don't get involved in. But I think the idea is in my practice, because I am a standalone practice, the fit has to be there such that just as me, myself, and I, is substantial enough for the level of care that a patient may need. Sometimes it's such that a patient is in such acute, distress that at that time, that level of outpatient care may not be necessary and sufficient. They may need a team or a more structured setting.
Right. So question, I would like to know, what would you like to see the future of mental health? What would you like to see happen in this country?
I think
if you had a magic wand and you could wave it and say with mental health.
Yeah. So a couple things. I think what's really neat, and a lot of people don't know this, we now have a lot more tools at our disposal. I do a type of genetic testing, and I can do it for anyone who wishes, although for insurance to pay for it, you have to meet some criteria, which is often some failed treatments in the past. But a simple swab of the inside of the oral cavity allows us to extract DNA from cells. And from that, I'm able to profile for a patient in terms of all the psychotropics that are out there, what they'll be able to metabolize appropriately or not. And just right there, that gives us a leg up that we didn't have years ago, where we would just kind of best guess, oh yeah, this side effect, that side effect, what do you prefer? This sounds like it would be a good fit for you. Let's go for it. So a little less of this trial and error and a little more informed decision making. I think so these types of tools, using them more readily for them being more accessible to all patients. And then the other thing I'd like to see is certainly just much more parity in terms of the healthcare system out there. I don't care what you say, but organic medical illness does not get the same kind of reimbursement in insurance as medical illness. But
medical illness can cause mental illness.
Absolutely it can. And I'm just trying to distinguish, I guess, mental health issues from medical issues, but they really are one and the same.
Yeah, one and the same.
know,
'cause
I'm
it's
an
a whole
MD
body.
after all, absolutely. But you know, there's not that parity in terms of resources out
Right.
there for patients, especially when it comes to third-party payers and
Right.
insurance, and just getting that conversation out there to a place where we don't feel shame,
Right.
where there's less of a stigma, where we feel like we can talk to one another
Right.
about it.
I would like to see more sort of mental health, like they have these little vans that go out and check people's blood pressure and things like that. I mean, I know it's in depth, but I would like to see more of those kind of like community outreach to some of the poorer communities, some of the communities of color, some of the communities that don't have that extra, because you have to have that extra money or at least healthcare to be able to get mental health treatment. So I'd like to see some more of that kind of stuff going on.
Yeah. And, I'd like to add to that, which is that a lot of the systems that are out there, I think would greatly benefit if there was a much more integrative approach, right? Not only would that be better off for the other aspects of healthcare, but I think there is a mind-body component, right?
Absolutely.
And too often, that's the last thing that's looked at.
So, Nicole, we are at the end of the show. It
went so
quickly.
fast.
Yeah, everybody says
man.
that. And we could go on forever, and we've just scraped the surface.
So amazing.
I just want to thank you for
you.
coming to the show, saying yes.
Yeah.
And
power of yes.
Yeah, the power of yes. So thank you for saying yes. I appreciate you. I thank you. And I hope the listeners got some value for what we were saying on this call today. And you can chime in, and they can reach you at
my website is the best, naggarpsych.com, or my email, dr.nicolenaggar@gmail.com. And I do just want to reiterate for everyone out there, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, 1-800-273-TALK, 8255. It's just a call away.
Absolutely. So until next week, thank you for chiming in. This is Noreen Sumpter signing off from Beyond Potential. Live life your way. Bye.
You're listening to the Talking Alternative Network.
Hello, this is Bruce Chamoff, host of the Web Design and Technology Coach. Join me and my guests every Tuesday from 8 to 9 p.m. as we discuss the latest in web design, social media marketing, search engine optimization, and technology. We also discuss popular topics, including WordPress, making money online, better Google rankings, and more. Every month, we also feature the best unsigned music from around the world, right here on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to the Talking Alternative Network. Are you stuck in a rut? Negative thoughts, feelings, and conversations got you down? Hi, I'm Noreen Sumpter, the Potentiator. Tune in every Tuesday at 9 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time and listen for new ideas on my show, Beyond Potential, Live Life Your Way, on talkradio.nyc.
Hey, all you crazy listeners. Looking to boost your business? Why not advertise on Talking Alternative with very reasonable rates? Interested? Simply email at info@talkingalternative.com.
Are you into comics, movies, and pop culture at large? What about music and TV? Then you're in for a treat. This is Michael Dolce, your host on talkingalternative.com. I've been professionally writing comic books, screenplays, and music articles for almost 15 years. Catch my show, Secrets of the Sire, at its new primetime slot, Wednesdays, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and get the inside scoop on the pop culture universe you love to talk about. For more info, go to secretsofthesire.com.
You're listening to the Talking Alternative Network at www.talkingalternative.com. Now, broadcasting 24 hours a day. Talking Alternative.
Are you a conscious co-creator? Are you on a quest to raise your vibration and your consciousness? I'm Sam Leibowitz, your conscious consultant. And on my show, The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, we will touch upon all these topics and more. Listen live at our new time on Thursdays at 12 noon Eastern Time. That's The Conscious Consultant Hour, Awakening Humanity, Thursdays, 12 noon on talkradio.nyc.
You're listening to the Talking Alternative Network.